Everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the mini series Everyday Heroes, insights from experts and parents. I am so excited to be part of this. I'm so excited to be able to talk to Rebecca today. I'm just going to go live on Facebook and Instagram. So let me just make sure that we've got those two started. Okay, while that's happening, so let's talk about this most amazing, incredible human I have in front of me. Beck is a seasoned educator. She has been in the education profession for a number of years, and she's also a mum to a beautiful 6-year-old autistic boy. And she is a passionate parent, but she also wants to share the knowledge and wisdom that she's gained over so many years of her experience, not only being as an educator, but also being on the side of mum. So she's seen it from both sides, and she's been on both sides of the desk when it comes to SSGs and IEPs. Now, for those of you, they're probably thinking, well, what the heck are these acronyms? I don't understand. I don't know what this is. And especially for a lot of parents who are in kindergarten, who maybe aren't going to be using these acronyms, they're just like, this probably doesn't apply to me. But I would say, please take out your notebook. This is going to be a really, really chunky, juicy interview, because you're going to be able to use this information to be able to go back into your schooling system and say, this is how I want our SSGs to be done. This is how I want our IEPs to be done. So without any further ado, Beck, welcome. Thank you so much for attending today.
Thanks, Nat.
Yes, thank you. Can you just share with us a little bit about your journey as a teacher and as well as a mum to an autistic boy?
I've been a teacher for a while now, in mostly the area of pastoral care and wellbeing. I'm mostly in the senior school, but part of my primary role is creating and running these SSG and IEP appointments. I think across the last decade, we've seen a real sort of shift in the way they're done, and I think we're making some good headway there. But having sort of had that experience, I thought I was well equipped to head into my son's appointments, and I just found I was anything but. It was quite a sort of a wide disparity, and I almost didn't know what to ask or what to do, even though I used to run them myself. And I just felt sort of like I didn't know what to do to support my son, and like I wasn't sort of doing enough in that situation, or I didn't want to be that parent in that journey. So yeah, I sort of came in thinking I was well placed and everything was going to be okay, and it was a little bit bumpy for a while.
Yeah, and you know what? I would say that bumpiness that you feel, most parents feel it, right? Whether they have that background of education to fall back onto or not, so many parents are thrown in the deep end and just, I don't know what I'm doing. And, like we were just talking before off air, how many times have you gone to maternal health nurse or a doctor's appointment or whatever and felt like you've left that appointment feeling just so average, like you don't know what you're doing, but no one gives you a manual, right? They don't give you a manual when you get a baby, and they sure as well don't give you a manual when you have an autistic child.
No.
Okay, so can you please share with our audience what the difference is and what the acronyms stand for that are SSG and IEP, please?
So an IEP is an individual education plan, and it's basically a written statement that has mostly 3 sections. The first one will be a background on your child, diagnoses, links to reports. Then the second will be a section on goals, both short-term and long-term goals that you see for your child. And then the final section will be a record of adjustments and or modifications that will help achieve those goals. In that section, you'll have parts that are school responsibility, parent responsibility, and then ways that the school will support the child to grow in their own skills. That's sort of the formal written document. Schools will do this differently. They certainly look different across the schools that I have been at, but they do generally have those 3 consistent categories. The SSG is a group of people that support the student on the IEP, and they're also the groups that is responsible for creating the IEP. And again, I have seen this change and grow across the years. So they're called a student support group. Primarily for us in a senior school, it would be a year level coordinator, potentially a head of wellbeing, school counsellor. But sort of through a primary school, you'll often see a deputy principal, classroom teacher, and potentially an integration aide involved in that SSG. But my first sort of tip comes here with, you can bring, we were talking before, you can bring your army to the SSG as well.
Yes.
This is where I have seen it develop across the years. You know, sometimes as a parent walking into those meetings, you feel like it's you against the people in the room. And sometimes it can sort of feel like the meeting is happening to you rather than with you. And that's completely not what it's meant to be about. It's meant to be about a collaborative information sharing approach so that this IEP document is really rich. You can see your child in that program and you're all working towards shared understanding, shared goals, sort of a genuine conversation. So my first tip there would be, if you do have regular professionals, absolutely bring them along. The most effective SSGs I've seen run have included the OT, the speech, the psych, and it's a round table discussion. If you can't get them there, I would always ask for the draft IEP beforehand or an outline of what they want of the sort of template that they're going to use for the IEP, so that you can meet with your army beforehand and go in with what your non-negotiables are that are going to be in that plan.
Yeah, right. Okay. And so another point could possibly be, which I've done quite a lot when my angel boy was in mainstream, was getting them on telehealth, right?
Yeah.
Or getting them on speakerphone, and being able so that because I love that. And I wish I had have known that before what you just said about having a copy so they could read through it prior to the meeting, because that's a really good point, because no one even thinks, oh, I definitely know, I didn't think that was an option. But having telehealth as an option sometimes, because as we all know, it's a lot of money. Like by the time you pay for travel for the therapist to come to the school and pay for the actual meeting, it can get quite costly. So telehealth can be a cheaper way to be able to have the therapist present, but still obviously be able to contribute their way of thinking. Okay. What's the best way a parent can prepare for an SSG or an IEP?
So as I said, the SSG will kind of be the meeting to create the IEP. So the best thing to do for me is, I think, I sort of backwards map it, to use another teacher's term. What do I want my son to experience in this first year of prep? You know, if I fast forward to the end of prep, what do I want it to look like? What would be that, you know, empowering moment? What are our end goals? And then I work backwards from there to create 3, maybe 4 short-term goals in the lead up to getting to that point. And they're my sort of non-negotiables that I'd go into the meeting with, and I might have them ranked in terms of most important goal. Like, I'm not leaving that room unless this is on the IEP and he's going to get these adjustments and supports, to kind of, it'd be great if I could have all of these adjustments and supports. So I'd go in with a really clear, this is what I want it to look like. This is my expectation for where we would hopefully be at the end of the year. And this is roughly how I think, you know, we can get there. Go in with that pre-ready. As I said to you before, you know, don't let the IEP happen to you. Let it happen with you. Bring the things that you know work for your child. Champion your child, you know.
Yeah.
If there's a timer that they use, make sure that's in there. Don't leave that room until it's in there, that they can use it and how they're going to use it.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. Sorry, did you want to add something else to that?
I've got a few more. Yep.
Yes, please,
so
go ahead.
The goals that they will create on these IEPs are built around the sort of, again, another acronym. We love an acronym. Are SMART goals, and they're going to be, you know, specific, really clear. What I would say to you as a parent is, I flip this specific and say, not only is it a really clear goal, but can you clearly see your child in the goal? Is this actually something that you want to work on? And is it something that they're actually going to thrive in?
Yeah.
If it's not specific to your child and it's just something that maybe the school has thought might be a good idea, and this can often be the case if it's, particularly prep, they don't really know the students, so they think this is normally what works. Absolutely push back if you can't see your child in that IEP. It's called an individual education plan for a reason. If you can't see your individual in there, if it's not specific to them, ask questions. Where do I see my child in this? I can see them here, but I think we can do a bit better up there. The other part of that acronym is that the goal will often be measurable. Be really clear. Ask how and when is that going to be measured? When are we going to come back and check this? What would you see as criteria for success? And bring your home experience in. Often what we're checking against or measuring against is what we're seeing at school, which we know is such a small part of your child's day. If your child is holding it together and seemingly meeting these goals at school, but you get them home and they're a wreck, that's not measurable for me.
Yeah.
Bring that into the meeting and say, you know what, I can see, like, for example, my son's currently meeting 3 of his 5 at school, but I can tell you when he's at home, we're kicking 0 and 5, right? Yeah. Because he holds it together so much that he just melts down at home. That to me is not measurable. The adjustments that we have currently in place aren't doing what they're meant to do. Yes, they're getting the 9 to 3, but it's costing too much. And that's not something I'm happy with. What else can we do to adjust in the next IEP to try and mitigate that as well? Think measurable goal, not just at school, but also measurable in the wellbeing overall. That's what these are meant to be as well.
Okay, can I just say, my mind is blown. My mind is blown. The fact that you are saying that the home experience is taken into account when we're talking about an IEP, I never would have even thought that was even an option.
Yeah, bring that in. What is happening there is going to affect them at school the next day. If it's going to take you 3 to 4 hours to bring them down and then take them back to school, we're not setting them up for success.
No,
bring it in.
I hope everyone is listening and taking notes. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Bring it in, challenge it, advocate.
Yes. Okay, good. What's the next one?
So the other parts of those are, in terms of those SMART goals, that we talk about achievable goals and agreed goals. That's where I would, again, backwards map. Sometimes the things that we bring up are because we've seen it work with other students. If you think that's not an aligned goal for your child, absolutely say, have you thought about this? Can we bring in our other goal? Mm-hmm. The R for the SMART goal is realistic. And this is where I would ask some questions, particularly as you move through senior year levels. Some of the reasonable adjustments that we include to help students reach their goals in year 9 and 10, for example, can't be carried into the VCE. And some parents, sometimes that's not clear in those meetings. So I would ask the question of, is this an adjustment that is able to be carried through? Is this something that we can continue doing next year? And if it's not, what's the plan to support the student to develop skills when we move towards that next level? And the other thing in terms of realistic there is, in terms of preparing and developing skills, do we need these reasonable adjustments to reach the goals in every subject or across every specialist area? Sometimes we can say we absolutely require them in, generalist maths or English classes, but my kid's a champion in PE and art, so please don't, let's try without adjustments there and then, and then add them in. So these adjustments and goals can be across the board, or they can be sort of subject or teacher specific. And in terms of pre-preparing and, future thinking, that backwards mapping, I would definitely advocate for changing those goalposts along the way where we find those strengths.
Absolutely, because they're going to have strengths, right? Some of these kids are so good in such different areas, and we do need to hone in on that. We do need to show them that, yes, you're really good at this and you don't need that support because you're so good. And that builds that confidence, and further along, that builds that self-esteem that we're so looking for these children to develop. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Excellent. What's the next one?
The other one is timely. So the end of the goals, they'll have like a review period. I always make it really clear in my son's IEP that I would prefer to know earlier rather than later, just because we've got a review of our IEP in term 2 doesn't mean that if we're noticing something collectively as a care team, we don't come out and say, I know we've said term 2, but I think we need to make some more adjustments here, or I think we need to come back and have another time to meet. The other thing I'd add in that timely is making sure that you're really clear who the IEP is going to. Sometimes our kids can have 7 or 8 teachers in a day, or they have casual relief teachers that come in. And I know certainly for my son, the change in that caregiver is something really tricky to navigate, particularly if those people aren't aware of those specific adjustments that are really important to him. So I think it's making it clear that you want it shared, and you want it shared with everybody. And these are your sort of 3 non-negotiables, whether it's a CRT or a specialist teacher, etc.
So would you say that it's really important for any of the staff members to notify you as a parent that if there's going to be a change in a teacher spot, that they let you know?
Yeah, we're practical. That's actually written in my son's IEP at the moment, because he just does not handle that transition well at all. It is the teacher just gives a generic weekly update to everybody, and she's made a really minor adjustment, adding that to say, by the way, I have professional development on Monday, or I'm doing development at school, and they'll have a different teacher. And that just allows us to do that groundwork at home and set him up for success before he enters the classroom, rather than turning up teachers not there.
Yep.
Sort of thing.
Yeah,
now,
definitely.
We know we can't do that all the time. There's going to be days where they're sick and there's changes, but where we have those forward planning opportunities, I think it's really fun.
And is it really important to set the date for the next next date for
yes.
this SSG?
Yeah, and I think it's important for two reasons. We've got that kind of measurable goal that we know where we're getting to. We can start collecting our evidence from home as parents. We can go, if we can't have our army in the room, we know at our appointment before the IEP, we can say, hey, we've got the IEP coming up. What do you think about this? I'll often align, if we're doing some regular sort of testing for my son, we'll align that so that I can take a new speech report or a new OT report, or at least 3 or 4 recommendations into that meeting from them if they can't be there for some reason or another.
Yeah, no, I love that. Okay, brilliant. And is that all of the SMART goals?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so what would you say, what are the most important questions to ask for an IEP?
Always, who is it shared with and how? And making sure that you want to make that you want that IEP shared as widely as you can. I would always ask, as I said before you go in, to make sure you get a template of it. They may not have a draft the first time around, but certainly moving forward, they should have an idea of what they would like to talk about. So an agenda or a draft IEP, so you can come in pre-prepared. Always ask what their level of expectation is around achieving that goal. So if we're setting those goals, what evidence will tell you that we've met that goal? Be really clear in the adjustment section. Make sure you ask, what is the teacher's role here? What else can we do at home to support the development of that role? And, what would you expect our student or the student to be able to do in that part? So you leave with a really clear understanding of what the goal is, when it's going to be checked, and who's doing what to achieve that.
Okay, good. Okay, great. What is one thing to never do or ask in or for an IEP for your child?
I honestly don't think there is anything. Having sat on both sides of the table, the purpose of these meetings and these plans are to get the best possible outcome for the student. If you're coming from a place of genuine, this is what I think is the best for my child, you are the expert in the room on your child. So if you're asking, if we can't do it or we can only part meet it, I really think you're well within your rights to ask and advocate and see how close you can get to that sort of point that you need.
Yep, love that. Do you have any further comments that you wanted to add in before we go to rapid fire questions?
Don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I've got 5 rapid fire questions. Simple, short answers, just where you can, just to get a bit of insight into your brain and how you work. So, what's the best piece of advice you were given about an SSG or an IEP?
Don't let it happen to you. Let it happen with you.
Love that. Very true. One word to describe your autism journey.
Inspiring.
Oh, I love it. Yes. One myth about autism that you wish would go away.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, a lack of empathy or like an inability to emote. Yeah.
From as in like that you think that other people think that autistic children can't have
that they don't. Yeah. And it's like that's so wrong.
That's true.
Yes.
It's so true. One thing you can't live without.
Chocolate.
Yes. Oh, that's pretty high on my list. Best way to de-stress.
Run or have a coffee.
Yes. Okay, thank you so much for coming on. This was so good because it added so much credibility and so much understanding for people who are walking into these meetings having little to no understanding of what they're supposed to do. How do they advocate for their child? What do they ask for? What do these things look like? And it can be really scary. I know I was really worried and scared when I moved into the mainstream setting. In the special needs setting, it's very relaxed. It's not the same as in the mainstream setting. You're speaking to a teacher who has 6 children in her class, and she's got a really good feel for where your child is at, and then can obviously go through the goals that you're setting. But in a mainstream setting where there's definitely going to be a lot more children, and I say this, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like there's not as much knowledge from teachers around just neurodivergence in general. Would I be right in saying that, or am I completely off mark?
Depends.
Okay, yeah. If pretend that you've got a child, you are a teacher without an autistic child, and you are just raising typical children. Do you see that it's less? Do you see that those teachers tend to have more experience with neurodivergence, or they're just really just the cream on the top and they're not really getting into the nitty gritty?
Not really the nitty gritty. Yeah, they miss the nuance, I think.
Yeah. So then this is where, and it's no fault of their own. Like, this is no shade on teachers, because my God, they're doing. I'm trying to teach one kid, mate. I don't think I could do more than that. So hats off to the teachers who are out there busting their butt, trying to teach the best way that they can with so many children with such a varying degree of learning and so many different learning styles. So my heart is so full for teachers, and I'm so grateful that we even have them. I would like to see more education in the tertiary component around when you're getting taught to become a teacher, that there's more exposure to neurodivergence and what that looks like and how. And granted, you're not always going to get it right, because like we know the saying goes, once you've met one autistic child, you've met one autistic child, right? So like just having a more of awareness, because as we see, there seems to be just more and more diagnoses popping up every day. And of course, you're not always going to get it right, but at least if you have sort of an understanding of how that looks and an open heart and an open mind, when a therapist comes in and says, let's try it this way, let's try it that way, instead of taking it as like an attack on the teacher, more like, let's work as a team. Like, this is a team effort, because it really is. It's such a team effort when it comes to raising an autistic child in a mainstream setting. Like this, it's not an easy feat, and that's why it's got so many different arms and legs. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's you're absolutely right. And I think, as I said before, that IEP and SSG is that shared conversation. And I think if we view it as that way, and it's an information sharing session, really, then it kind of demystifies, well, I can ask that or I can't ask that.
Yeah.
It's literally just tell us your expert knowledge and we'll let you know kind of how that all fits and what can and can't occur, basically.
Yes, I love that. Thank you so much, Beck. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Hopefully our listeners have taken lots of notes, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, Nat.
Thanks. Okay, just need to make sure that I'm ended over there so that that's off. Well done. Good job. Yes, you did really well. That was really, really good. It was very comprehensive and so many golden nuggets. Like, I wish that I had have known half this stuff before we went into, so many things, but you don't know. Like, no one.
No, you don't know, you don't know what you don't know, do you? And even, and this is, sort of bits and pieces from, decades long stuff. As I said, it's changed so much as well. Like those first SSGs that we were doing now, like compared to how we do them now, it's just, we would never have had care professionals in there. And
right.
So many really great changes to support.
So kids. Good. And it's just, but that's the worrying thing. A part about it is that autism now is 1 in 40, right? So we're just getting higher and higher. So the fact that these meetings are coming up, it needs to be even more detailed, because soon, I suspect, this is my opinion, this is not fact, but 10 years time, you'll walk into a classroom and the majority of children will have some sort of neurodivergence and the minority will be typical. That's where I think we're heading to. And so I think it's so important for teachers to get that component in tertiary, because as if you're going to know, like before Alio was diagnosed, you think I knew anything about autism?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know.
Because you don't know what you don't know, and you didn't need to know, did you? And then,
So, like, you can't, it's hard because parents get so frustrated with teachers, but they don't know, like they're not taught. So if you don't know, how can you possibly do better? Because you're not even exposed. So I really hope that the government will add more into the tertiary sector. But the other confronting part is that two of my cousins did 2 separate organisation courses to become an aide in the classroom. And I was so keen. I was like, so how much of it was neurodivergent? And she's like, she rolled her eyes. Both of them are like 5%. And I was like, but you're supporting neurodivergent children. You're not supporting typical children. Maybe back in the 80s, then you were probably supporting typical children, but not now. Now you're supporting children, dyslexia, dysgraphia, ADHD, autism, OCD, PDA. Like, the list goes on. That's who you're supporting. Like, it's bananas. It is bananas. But anyway, I will let you go so you can get back to work. Thank you.
No,
and
thank you.
and we'll talk to you soon.
See you, Nat.
See ya.